A small glow-in-the-dark handle hangs inside a modern car trunk, placed where a trapped person can find it without light. For most of American automotive history, enclosed trunks locked from the outside, but offered no built-in escape from within. After children died in overheated trunks and survivors exposed how helpless entrapment could be, that overlooked design became a federal safety issue. Why did such a basic escape take decades to appear? And what finally forced the change? The story begins as enclosed luggage compartments became standard on American passenger cars. Introduction: a pen. The trunk of a modern American sedan, and look near the latch. A small plastic handle hangs against the dark lining. It may be shaped like a T, marked with the outline of a person escaping from a car, and molded from material that glows after the lid closes. Most owners will never touch it. The handle exists for the person who was never supposed to be inside the trunk. For most of automotive history, the luggage compartment could be opened from outside with a key, a lever, or a control near the driver. Once the lid latched, a child playing hide and seek or an adult forced inside by a criminal could find no release on the other side. The danger was easy to underestimate, because a trunk was not treated as a passenger space. It was a locked box for luggage. But in 1995, one survivor turned her own escape from a car trunk into a national campaign. 3 years later, 11 children died in 3 trunk entrapment incidents during a single summer. Investigators found that the central danger was not merely running out of air. In hot weather, the enclosed compartment could become lethal through hypothermia, sometimes combined with asphyxia. The federal response did not require one patented handle, and it did not cover every vehicle with a rear cargo area. It created a performance rule for enclosed trunks in passenger cars. So why did automobiles spend decades with no way out from inside? Why were early warnings dismissed? And how did one nearly invisible handle become a permanent part of American automotive safety? Chapter 1: The locked room behind the set. The earliest automobiles carried luggage in external trunks, racks, or boxes attached to the body. As enclosed passenger cars developed, manufacturers gradually built storage into the rear of the vehicle. The separate luggage compartment became a normal feature of the American sedan. As the trunk moved into the body, it also became easier to lock as part of the car. A key cylinder on the lid controlled the latch. Later, a cable or electric switch near the driver allowed convenient opening without walking around the vehicle. Each improvement assumed the user would be standing outside the compartment or sitting in the passenger cabin. Its purpose shaped its design. The trunk was meant to protect property. The lid closed over a compartment separated from the passenger area, and its latch was controlled from outside or from the driver's position. A key prevented someone on the street from reaching suitcases, tools, groceries, or a spare tire. Designers had little reason to place a second control inside. No passenger was meant to ride there, and the compartment was not treated like a room that required an exit. That assumption survived even as trunks grew large enough for a child or an adult to fit inside. The latch itself created the basic trap. On many cars, pushing the lid down moved a striker into the latch until it caught. Springs might help lift the lid once it was released, but they could do nothing while the latch remained engaged. The metal linkage leading to the key cylinder or driver's lever was hidden behind trim and difficult to identify in darkness. A child could climb into an open trunk while playing. Another child could push the lid down, or the child inside could pull it toward the opening. In some incidents, children found the keys and opened the trunk themselves once the lid latched. The normal controls were all on the wrong side. An adult trapped by a criminal faced the same mechanical problem, often with the added difficulty of being restrained, injured, or disoriented. Tearing away the trunk lining might reveal rods or cables, but nothing guaranteed that the person would recognize the correct part or be able to reach it. For years, these incidents appeared scattered and difficult to count. Trunk entrapment was a non-crash danger, so it did not fit neatly into the federal systems built around collisions, roadway deaths, and vehicle defects. In 1984, William Pearl petitioned the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration to require an interior release in every new car. He listed children, mechanics, prank victims, crime victims, and even older adults among those who might become trapped. NHTSA denied the petition. The agency said it lacked evidence that unintentional entrapment occurred often enough to justify a rule. It reasoned that trunk lids were generally spring-loaded open and difficult to close accidentally without someone standing behind the car, where the interior would be visible. The logic focused on the lid. It did not fully account for children who deliberately treated the trunk as a hiding place. or for one child closing the lid on another. Concern did not disappear. Over the following years, citizens continued writing to the agency. In 1997, NHTSA answered another proposal for interior releases by saying it still lacked data on deaths and injuries sufficient to support regulation. The problem had reached the government. It had not yet reached the kind of database the government trusted. That gap reveals a recurring weakness in safety history. A collision leaves a police report, a damaged vehicle, and a familiar category in official statistics. A person trapped in a stationary car might be recorded under homicide, kidnapping, hypothermia, asphyxia, or an unusual accident. The mechanical circumstance connecting those cases, the locked trunk, could disappear inside the paperwork without a reliable count. A cheap safety proposal could still be judged unnecessary. Chapter 2. The woman. WHO found the cable in October 29, 1995. Jeanette Fennell and her husband returned to their home near San Francisco with their infant son. Two armed men confronted them in the garage. The attackers forced the couple into the trunk of their Lexus, took the car, and drove away. Their baby remained behind in the driveway in his car seat. Inside the trunk, the couple could not see what was happening to their child or where the car was taking them. The trunk had no obvious interior release. After the car was abandoned, Fennell pulled at the lining until she exposed parts of the latch mechanism. She found a cable, pulled it, and opened the lid. She and her husband escaped and eventually learned that their son was safe. Fennell had survived because she found a hidden mechanical connection that most trapped people would not know existed. She did not invent the emergency trunk release. Ideas for interior releases had been proposed years earlier. Her importance came from what she did afterward. She began contacting manufacturers, regulators, safety groups, victims, and families. She formed the Trunk Releases Urgently Needed Coalition, known as Trunk, and collected reports of both criminal and accidental entrapment. The records exposed a problem hidden by official categories. Some people had been forced into trunks during robberies, kidnappings, and carjackings. Others entered voluntarily while repairing cars or playing pranks. Young children climbed inside during games and could not explain what had happened before they disappeared. Fennell argued that the same basic object could help all of them, a release that could be found and operated from inside. The campaign initially met the same objection NHTSA had raised before. How large was the problem? Would criminals simply disable the device? Could a frightened preschool child understand a handle in total darkness? Would an interior release compromise the security of the luggage compartment? Those were real questions, but the absence of reliable national data had become part of the danger. If entrapments were recorded as kidnappings, heat deaths, suffocations, or unusual household accidents, no single system revealed the full pattern. By January 1999, Fennell told a federal expert panel that she had assembled media reports and anecdotal evidence describing more than 900 trunk entrapment cases. That was not the same as a verified federal fatality count, but it demonstrated how much official databases might be missing. Her survival gave the campaign a visible advocate. The events of 1998 gave it an unbearable urgency. Fennell's story also changed the way the public understood the trunk. It was no longer only a place where children might become trapped by accident. It could be used deliberately as a moving prison. One release mechanism now connected two forms of danger that had previously been discussed separately: child play and violent crime. Chapter 3. 11 children in 3 weeks. In June 1998, Congress directed NHTSA to study whether vehicles should be required to have an interior trunk release device. Then came the summer. On July 13th, 4 children between 2 and 5 years old were found inside a closed car trunk in Gallup, New Mexico. The afternoon temperature had reached about 90 degrees. All 4 died. On August 2nd, 2 brothers, ages 2 and 5, were found in the trunk of their parents' car in Pennsylvania. They had obtained the keys, opened the trunk, and climbed inside. The outside temperature was approximately 85 degrees. Both died 6 days later. 5 girls between 2 and 6 years old were found in a trunk in West Valley City, Utah. The outside temperature was 100 degrees. In 3 incidents over less than a month, 11 children were dead. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention investigated the cluster and searched for earlier cases. Its review identified 19 children aged 6 or younger who had died in 9 trunk entrapment incidents between 1987 and 1998. Every fatal incident occurred in hot weather. The medical findings also corrected a simple but incomplete explanation. These children did not all die merely because the trunk was airtight. The recorded causes were hypothermia, or hypothermia combined with asphyxia. A closed trunk could heat rapidly under the sun. A child's body produced heat while crying, pushing, and searching for an exit. With no practical way to open the lid, the compartment became a heat trap. In the Utah incident, at least one older child reportedly knew how to operate the trunk release beside the driver's seat. That knowledge was useless from behind the rear partition. The deaths revealed a design contradiction. A car could provide remote or driver-operated convenience releases while giving the person in greatest danger no control at all. They also changed the federal calculation. In 1984, NHTSA had judged the likelihood of accidental use of an interior handle to be remote. By late 1998, the agency had a documented cluster of deaths, a CDC investigation, a congressional study requirement, and an advocate showing that intentional entrapment was also real. The question was no longer whether an interior release might ever be used. It was whether frightened children could find and operate one before the heat overcame them. The CDC report recommended preventing children from gaining access to keys, keeping unattended cars locked with trunks closed, and supervising young children around vehicles. Those warnings addressed the immediate risk, but they still depended on perfect adult behavior. The design question remained: what should happen after prevention failed? Chapter 4: Designing a Handle for the Dark. Convened an independent expert panel on trunk entrapment. The group brought together automakers, law enforcement, physicians, child behavior specialists, safety advocates, engineers, and government representatives. At its meetings in 1999, the disagreement shifted from whether the problem existed to what kind of solution would actually work. Child psychologist Lenore Terr warned that very young children might shut down and wait passively for rescue. A release designed around adult reasoning could fail the children most likely to become trapped. General Motors presented a retrofit system with a handle illuminated for 30 minutes after the trunk closed. Company testing suggested that many children between 3 and 6 could operate it, but not all of them. GM therefore also explored ways to make accidental latching less likely and later developed automatic detection concepts. Ford took a different route. Its engineers considered 22 approaches and consulted a psychologist about how young children naturally responded to unfamiliar objects. The company tested symbols and handles with 27 children between 3 and 5 years old. The design Ford selected was cable-operated, required a short pull, and ended in a T-shaped handle sized for a child's hand. A phosphorescent additive allowed it to glow without a battery. Ford said brief exposure to garage light could make the handle visible for hours inside the closed trunk. That was the ancestor of the object now familiar to American drivers. It was not the only compliant idea, and Ford did not invent the general concept of an interior release. Its importance was practical. The handle was inexpensive, mechanically simple, easy to pull, visible in darkness, and ready for mass production. Ford announced that it would install the release in all of its model year 2000 cars with trunks and offer retrofits for several earlier model years. Other manufacturers pursued illuminated manual releases or automatic systems. The diversity of designs helped shape the panel's recommendation, required the safety result, but leave manufacturers room to choose the mechanism. The panel considered relying entirely on voluntary action, requiring a release without defining its performance, or creating a detailed technical standard. Each path had a weakness. Voluntary action might leave some cars unchanged. A vague requirement might produce handles that children could not find or operate. An overly specific rule could freeze one technology in place. The compromise was a broad federal requirement with one crucial human factors condition. A manual release had to be visible in darkness. On June 8, 1999, the panel recommended that automakers install trunk safety features in new vehicles and that NHTSA establish a federal standard. The agency proposed the rule in December 1999. This was a reversal 15 years in the making. NHTSA's 1984 denial had said the likely use of an interior lever was remote. The new proposal cited the CDC's 19 documented child deaths, the work of the expert panel, manufacturer testing, and voluntary adoption already underway. visibility became part of the requirement because a release that existed but could not be found in darkness offered little protection. The rule therefore did not say every car must contain the same green T-shaped handle. A manual release had to include lighting, phosphorescence, or another feature making it easy to see inside the closed trunk. Manufacturers could instead use an automatic system that detected a person and unlatched the lid within 5 minutes. The standard was written around escape, not appearance. Chapter 5. The rule behind the Cologne Tsar issued the final rule establishing Federal Motor Vehicle Safety Standard number 401 on October 20th, 2000. The effective date was September 1st, 2001. Those dates describe different moments. October 2000 was when the agency published the final decision. September 2001 was when covered new passenger cars had to comply. The standard applies to passenger cars with an enclosed trunk compartment large enough for a 3-year-old child dummy to fit inside, while the lid is closed and latched. It requires an automatic or manual mechanism inside the compartment that releases the trunk lid. A manually operated release must be easy to see in the closed trunk through lighting, phosphorescence, or an equivalent feature. An automatic system must unlatch the lid within 5 minutes after a person is enclosed. The requirement does not extend to every rear cargo space. A hatchback or station wagon with a back door is treated differently because its cargo area is connected to the passenger compartment and its rear opening serves as a door rather than a separate trunk lid. The standard is directed at the enclosed luggage compartment of a passenger car. It does not automatically place the same glowing handle in every SUV, van, or pickup. Even among regulated sedans, the handle does not have to be green, T-shaped, or identical from one manufacturer to another. Some are loops, paddles, buttons, or levers. What matters is that the release can be located and that operating it fully unlatches the lid. The phosphorescent pull handle became the familiar visual language because it solved several problems at once. It required no battery to remain visible. Its cable could act directly on the latch. Its large shape gave a frightened person something obvious to grab. The symbol printed on it completed the message. A person moving away from an open car. The new rule addressed both forms of entrapment that had shaped the debate. A child who climbed inside accidentally received a chance to escape. An adult forced into the trunk during a crime received a control that no longer required tearing away the lining and guessing which cable to pull. It could not guarantee survival in every case. A person might be restrained or unconscious. A very young child might not understand the handle. An older car might have no release at all. The standard was not retroactive, although manufacturers and safety organizations offered some retrofit programs. The final rule estimated that compliance would cost about $2 per passenger car. That figure made the history especially revealing. The eventual device was small, mechanically simple, and inexpensive. The difficult part had not been proving that a cable could open a latch. It had been proving that the hidden danger justified changing millions of vehicles. The rule changed what every new covered passenger car would provide. From that point forward, return to the small glowing handle near the latch. It is easy to overlook because the safety feature occupies a place owners rarely inspect. It waits in darkness, performing no function during normal driving. The trunk opens from outside, luggage goes in, and the lid closes. Its value appears only when the normal assumptions fail. American cars went for decades without an interior trunk release because the compartment was designed around cargo security and because entrapments remained scattered across categories that made the danger appear smaller than it was. The change came from several forces, not one person or tragedy. Early petitions, crime survivors, Jeanette Fennell's advocacy, the 11 children who died in 1998, CDC investigators, Congress, child behavior experts, manufacturers, and federal regulators. Together, they changed the trunk from a locked container into a space that had to include an exit. The glow-in-the-dark handle is small because the engineering problem was never complicated. The hard part was convincing the country that a room no one was supposed to enter still needed a way out.